All right, guys, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:34. Pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda A through F. Can I get a motion? Yep. Any questions, comments, concerns about consent agenda? All right, excellent. All those in favor of passing consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, public comments. Okay. All right, and now we are moving to what it's, what? Oh, that's okay. What it says on the agenda, Cognia results presentation, which is our state assessment. And that's Casey.
Great. I did share this presentation with all of you, or Lisa Bowen did, through your Slate Valley account, if you wanted to look at that while I project. I also made copies, if you want something to write down on, and I can send these around, so feel free to take one.
Some people will take someone to pass it down. That'd be great. Thank you.
That'll allow me to pass.
I don't get it.
Can I have a copy as well? I don't see it in my email.
It's coming.
Oh, it is. Okay.
They are coming around. Apologies.
Okay, thank you.
I should have listened.
Just so you know, it's from Lisa, and it
Should be
came
Lisa
through at
sometime
12:48.
Today?
Today.
Oh, is that
Today.
VTCAP? Is that what this
Yeah.
is?
No,
Yep.
that would be-
Oh, just kidding, I have it. Yep. Okay, there we go.
Paperboard.
Thank you.
She's living in retirement.
No.
Trying to cast it.
Comfy coat.
Yeah, mine's all down.
Okay. Well, you all have it. Somehow figure out what's going on here. So as Julie said, the VTCAP is the acronym, thanks Walt, for the Vermont Comprehensive Assessment Program. Cognia is the company that provides that assessment for the state of Vermont. And so throughout Vermont's history of standardized testing, they once called the test SBAC, which was the maker of the test, the Smarter Bounds Assessment Consortium. That was once called NECAP, which was New England Common Assessment Program. So those names are used interchangeably. Just know the Vermont Common Assessment, Comprehensive Assessment Program is the same thing as the maker of the test, Cognia. We talk a little bit about as well, kind of a benchmark assessment that you hear me sharing when we meet often, and how that compares to VTCAP. And then Act 139, I don't think we've really talked about this, and this is legislation that was put in place for 2024, which is related to kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, and literacy. So, spoke with Julie briefly before I started here, and instead of having us log on to Chromebooks if you don't have a device and start to go through this assessment on your own, you can log on at any time, now that you found this in your email, and go and take a practice assessment from the state's website. Well, I'm just casting a tab, not my entire screen. Well, anyway, if you click on that link that's in this slide deck that's shared with you, you could go and see the different practice tests that exist for math and ELA, and they have them at different grade levels. You could, and they do have science as well. Yep, you could go through a third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh, eighth, and ninth, and look at those practice assessments. Last spring, I believe it was, Abby Wald and Judy Folmsby came here and they shared examples from the assessment. I've included those in this slide deck for those who weren't here during that presentation. And so you'll see the types of questions that were asked as part of VTCAP. An important aspect of this assessment, which is different to the STAR assessment that we use more regularly in our district, this is criterion referenced, which, as the definition says there, asks you to achieve at a specific level at your grade band. So if the standard that you're being evaluated on in third grade math has you solving multiplication and division equations within 100, and you're not able to do that, you're not going to get a question that is down in like the second grade band, potentially asking you to solve multiplication and division questions within 50. The range in which the computer adaptive nature of this criterion exam keeps you within your grade band. So we do know that we have students that are working off grade level, and so the achievement in this VTCAP Cognia assessment doesn't always let students achieve at the level that they're working at, and so sometimes that leads to frustration, and sometimes that can lead to a student potentially ending this exam and therefore not showing us all that they're capable of. This was shared by Judy and Abby in the spring. The different components, something that's pretty different in this assessment compared to what we do with STAR 363 times a year is that this is 6 hours of testing. New for 2026 is a third portion or part of the ELA assessment. They've separated out the writing prompt, and so they used to have that as part of session 2, and so the writing would take place as an extension of that session 2. They've really decided that they wanted to pause kids for a bit and then move them onto a writing section. And as Julie said, there's science that's assessed as well in grades 5, 8, and 11.
Can you give me an example, Casey, of like when the kids take this in April and there's 3 ELA sessions and 2 math sessions? How is that 6 hours spread out throughout the week? Do they do is it set up so they can do an hour VLA, an hour VLA, an hour VLA? Like, how does that work?
The real option, and that's, Amy's here, Ben's here, they might, Patrick, be able to speak to it specifically, but we do set a window in which the assessment needs to be completed in, but how it's broken up is really dependent on the building. And so it does happen that, ELA sessions might happen on one day, and then they might wait for another day to do another ELA session, whereas in another building they might decide to do 2 ELA sessions with a break in between.
So there's no, you don't have to do it a certain way. There's some flexibility there.
There's flexibility, yeah, as long as it's completed.
Total of 6 hours.
Yep. John?
So if we're not doing this uniformly across all buildings, basically, what is the validity of the test then?
The assessment itself is assessing kids on grade level scale.
I understand, but you're giving them different ways of approaching it.
Right, so
it doesn't seem like a reasonable way to measure all of our kids in the same way.
So if everyone has a good testing day, and let's say that was Wednesday, right, we could try to have everyone assess on Wednesday. But we've really led that flexibility for buildings to be able to say, when is a day based on, you know, what's going on in a given week, that they can maneuver things, whether that's specials teachers or whatever it is, to say that here's a window that in third grade we're going to do ELA in our they do it in their classrooms. So I don't think there's any given day of the week or time in a specific month where we would say this is the ideal time to do this. We say, really, you know your buildings, you know the learners in your buildings, you work with teachers to figure out when within this month window this assessment best fits with the schedules in a given classroom with a given instructor.
And a couple other points I'll just throw over Casey.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the state assessment window itself is March to May. So there's a variation within the state. So the fact that we're kind of narrowing that window down is different than what we have to according to the state comparison. And the other part that I would say historically for needing the flexibility in scheduling is often there are accommodations that come into play for the kids that are taking the assessment. So there are times where it's literally a manpower aspect of scheduling as well, that, you know, I have X number of kids that need to do small group breakout, and to try to get the scheduling of that, you know, different buildings and different schedules present where you sometimes need to build in that flexibility to say, these are the 2 weeks that we're going to get the assessment, because it's just hard to do a one size fits all.
Sue.
So I kind of have to agree with John. I don't think we're going to get a true picture. Children
Right.
test better, like say in the morning at 10 o'clock versus 1:30 in the afternoon or 2 o'clock at the end of the day when they're tired. Whereas Fairhaven, I'm just going to use you guys. Fairhaven grade school may say, yeah, we're going to do it on Thursday at 1:30, or we're going to do it at 2 o'clock. And Benson may say, yeah, we're going to do it on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. We're not going to get a true picture. And that's not fair to all our students.
Well, I would think we would have to trust our hired professionals that are educators, not you, not us, right? To know when
Well,
their
you
students.
can call, you call yourself
Yeah,
what you want to call yourself.
when they're, no, their students and their students' learning times. I think we can all agree that we all know children are at their best in the morning. That's like a national.
Right, it's a national known fact.
Yeah,
I don't
I
have to
think
be a
they know
teacher
that
to
too.
throw that out here.
I thought John was more talking about the fact that like all of our schools are not doing Tuesday morning at 10
Right.
on the same day, but the whole state's doing it all over the place between March and May.
Right, so that
Oh,
means the whole state is not doing a uniform test.
Potentially, yeah.
But it's
Right.
a standard, it's a criteria reference standardized assessment. Like you take the SATs at different times throughout the.
Right, but if
Have a
you do
choice.
it SAT, you're taking that all in one day.
Right.
What I thought I heard you say is like you might do
You can
some of
split it out
the
over days.
ELA,
Yep.
you know, and part of the math one day,
Yep.
where somebody might do all the ELA in one day and all the math in one day.
Right.
So it's still not a level playing field and it's not a uniform test, which to me nullifies some of the validity.
Penny, go
So
for it.
I think to some degree, you really have to think about the human factor and the, like, in a class of 20 kids, it doesn't matter what time of day or it doesn't matter what, day of the week or those kind of things. It's a cumulative knowledge of what you have. And yes, there are some days that I don't feel so good in the morning or so good in the afternoon or something like that. So my test scores might be somewhat impacted by that. But I don't think what you're saying, I mean, I've never seen any evidence to show that like kids in the morning testing versus kids in the afternoon. There's actually a lot of studies out there regarding that, or there were like 10 years ago. It doesn't hold any water as far as the time of day, because some kids test well, some kids are more morning kids and some kids are more
Some
afternoon
kids test well and
Some kids test
kids
better
don't,
after they've
period.
had activities. Some kids test better when they've
Yeah.
eaten or not eaten. Like there's all of those factors that go into that. So it's really hard to make those. It's like SATs. Like if I take an SAT this time, it could be that I have more knowledge to gain after that test. And so, 2 months later, My scores might go up or down depending upon that, but it's not gonna be super significant. You know, like the significance of those changes, I don't believe, really are something that you should look at.
Okay, so
I don't believe from what I know.
I'm gonna come back at you on this one.
Jamie, do you have a question?
No, go ahead.
Comment?
Well, I just went on Harvard.
It's not a question, it was
I
just a
always
comment.
refer to Harvard, they're my favorite, only because I was accepted there. But, so they're saying, and I have to follow with them, on average, students perform best on tests at the start of the day. And for every hour later in the day, that test score decreases. And that's from Harvard. It's a Harvard study.
Right,
Just putting it
well,
out
we're
there.
assuming right now that they don't all test in the morning. How do we know that they do?
We don't, that's what I'm
Right.
saying, like, how is this working? Because we don't know, it's not standard.
So Benson is testing at 9 o'clock, and Fairhaven Grade School is testing at 1 o'clock. We're just saying that, like, we're expecting Benson to do better than Fairhaven Grade by that.
I mean,
But-
you
but
pulled up the SAT,
Let's
right?
look at one other thing here. We're talking about, we have, I forget what grades, I just saw it here. Is
Three
it
through 9,
3, 9, and 11?
5, 8, and 11 is.
Okay, so by 11th grade, our job is to prepare these kids for a work life, some type of career.
Right.
And you need to think throughout the day. So I'm just,
So that would negate your point,
that
though.
would, well.
If you have to think throughout the day, then morning and afternoon
Right,
shouldn't matter.
right, they should.
Whether you
They should.
standardize it all at one time or not,
Yeah.
it's still not gonna be fair
Right.
to everyone all the time. You can't, it's impossible.
Well, right,
No, but let's go on
you also have
studies.
kids that take like ADHD meds that may not kick in till a little bit later. So their test scores may be better in the afternoon. So making everybody test it in the morning is not necessarily gonna give you better scores.
Yeah.
There could be a kid that tests better at 2, 1,
I
who
mean,
knows?
SAT does school day tests. Otter
Right.
Valley brings them all to the town hall. Test them at the town hall. They don't even do it at their school, right? Like, every school handles some of these standardized tests differently, depending on what they're doing, right? I mean, 8 AM is Saturday morning, but not 8 AM for a school day test. Who knows, right? I mean,
This is one data point, so
Yeah.
both are the
I just
conversation,
think
right?
the
It's just-
standardized tests have such a significance in our communities. And
They
they're
do.
what people see, right? So I understand where we're all concerned about, are these happening the way they should happen? Because this is what the people go on the state website, how's my school doing? Oh, look, it's horrible, right? Or the NAEPS, right? The National Student Assessment, One. The same thing with the NAEPS. They go on the government one, they see the NAEPS. How's everybody doing? I mean, that's what the community is, what, right or wrong, it's what the community cares about.
So we make certain that we follow the guidelines set by the state of Vermont, and then we use the judgment of our building administrators and teachers to be able to figure out how to what time to best administer those assessments. These screenshots are what's on the screen right now that I'm sharing and that I shared with you by passing them around are examples of different test questions. These were shared last spring, so I just put them in here as a reminder to what you saw last spring. And as I shared at the beginning of this slide deck, you can go yourself and take an assessment and look at these types of questions. So this slide here, the first time ever, I guess, because this is only the third year, 2025 in the spring was the third time we've given VTCAP. This is cohort assessment data, and the disclaimer at the top of this slide is to really say the agency did a wonderful job of getting this information to us as soon as they could in about October, right? End of September, Walt?
Yeah, at that point where we can do the embargo.
The embargo is lifted, but they put a condition in there and says, hey, we still have some fine tuning to do. There's potential that a student or two might not be included in your data set, and so therefore this is not considered completely final. But they did lift the embargo and said you could share it with stakeholders and use it for sake of conversation. This slide to me represents that we're able to work with students as they leave a specific grade level and recognize what students are a part of that achieving proficiency or exceeding proficiency on this criterion reference exam and then see how it is they're performing that following year. So if you take student X that's in 4th grade, are they a part of that 55% that's achieving proficiency or exceeding proficiency when they move into 4th grade? And so part of the check on our system is to try to figure out, are we equipping educators with the materials and resources necessary to present grade level content, and are we seeing students moving from achieving in 4th grade to achieving in 5th grade on a criterion reference exam as it relates to literacy and math in this case. And so you'll see, as you have an opportunity to digest this, that we do see with about 90 students per grade level, with a variation of a student or two, seeing that that cohort is able to achieve when they move to the next level, as we then look at the different students who are achieving at those levels. This slide here is not for you to guess what school district is being compared in this data set, but regionally, this is representing Rutland Northeast, Rutland City Public Schools, GRCSU, Mill River, Rutland Northeast, and Southwest Vermont, which is Bennington. And so I often will hear, what is the return on investment when it comes to this single data set? And you can see, out of our being one of the 7, that we have achievement that happens at a high rate when compared to our region. You can see the state of Vermont is in the first column, and so you can also see how it is we compare to the state of Vermont. I think it's important to recognize how the region performs when considering this information, because we do work in proximity to districts that are very close to ours. And so I would feel extremely proud of the performance, which is the result of the work that educators and administrators, support staff, everyone really does in these buildings to work with students throughout a given school year, where then they sit for 6 hours of an assessment in the spring of the given year. So that's what this slide speaks to. And then, outside of using BTCAP, we use something in preparation for that assessment, as well as using it as a part of our curriculum in terms of working with different students. We use STAR 360. So different from a criterion reference exam, this is norm referenced. And so the last time that this assessment was kind of calibrated in terms of how people are performing across the country was last year, was in 2025. So this allows students to 3 times a year get onto an assessment. They're still presented with grade level expectations, and we get results that allow us to think about our curriculum and instructional practices and how it is we work with students. And these results are norm referenced. So it's compared to another group of 5th graders in the country taking a similar assessment, or the same assessment, excuse me, and what their results are. So very different than the BTCAP, but it does point to kind of how it is students can perform at the end of the school year on a given standard at their grade level. Jamie.
Sorry. On the slide before the one you just did,
Yep.
Do we have information on, like, do these numbers, these percentages remain pretty consistent? Have we been going up? Have we been going down?
We have been going up.
Okay.
I do have, I've shared this before, but I would say as far back as I can track, which is 2014, we have not met or exceeded across all of our elementary schools the math performance that the state has. As far back as those assessments I talked about, SBAC and DCAP, so there are different assessment types before. I do have a slide later. Well, you even see in literacy that it's really 0.9 of a student that keeps us from achieving or exceeding what the state has. And we fluctuate. I talk a lot about subjective value. When you get to middle school and high school, there's a lot of, what does this mean to me? What does this count for? And so we do see fluctuation in those upper grades. Less so in our elementary, where we see more of an increase with those test results.
Because last year, math, we graded rough.
Yeah, it looks like 6, 7, 8.
The year, so if you go to the cohort data, and this is what lets me know that it was subjective value.
Yeah.
So when you look at 7, 8, 9 under math, as students said, in 7th grade, 30% of those students achieved at or above proficiency. And the following year, when they were in 8th grade, it was 8%, and then it was back up to 26%. So that's what I meant by we all try very hard to talk with our students about the value of this assessment and how it's useful to us as adults. That doesn't always sit well with students.
So this is the same cohort of kids.
Yeah.
In 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 5, okay.
Yep. So different from VTCAT, but some similarities, a difference of this norm referenced assessment is that we give it 3 times a year and we benchmark where is the student in the fall, where are they in the winter, and then where are they in the spring. In between those assessments, as I spoke about previously, we have other curriculum-based measures that allow us to progress monitor how students are doing as they move throughout the school year towards that end of year grade level expectation. And different from VTCAP, we can take a student that's working off grade level, and STAR 360 says this is what growth should occur in a given school year for that student. And we're able to monitor their growth and still show that they're improving their skills in literacy and math, even if they're still working off grade level. We can try to accelerate, we can change the rate of improvement for a student and accelerate kind of what that growth goal is going to look like, and we can therefore get them to achieve maybe above what's expected in a given year's worth for a student. Yeah, Matt?
So yes, to follow up on your point, like, what is the game plan? Like, STAR 360 is done 3 times a year, like you said.
Yep.
Once beginning of the year, once the middle of the year, once at the end of the year. And you're all comparing it to the end of the year grade, basically. Of what do you do with a student who's performing above grade level at that first assessment? You want them to progress throughout the year. How do you get a student that's performing, that's in 2nd grade, that's performing at the first half of 4th grade level? How do you get them to progress when the rest of the class is at most at 3rd grade level? Like, what do you do for that student? I understand that we're starting initiatives of like getting kids into individual reading groups, but that still kind of stymies them back down to grade level. So it's not really going to progress that hypothetical student.
Yeah, and the goal is to make certain that the reading that they're working through is challenging them to a degree that would allow them to continue to grow on the trajectory that they're on. I mean, one of the things that we're finding in a lot of conversations that I've had with elementary principals is recognizing that we're seeing students achieve at such a rate that we're spending time talking about how do you accelerate, how do you provide that challenge to students that are already proficient, which is different from a conversation 8 years ago where when I started, we were talking about how do we grow those students that are working off grade level. So specific strategies, are you asking me that a teacher might use?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what is it that a teacher can even do when there's a one-of-one student in that situation of you're performing off grade level at the first half of the year, and that's a really hard thing to approach. Like,
I don't think
teachers deserve credit for that.
I don't think I can talk about a specific strategy, but what I can tell you in terms of the tools is we have vertically aligned all the expectations for standards. So like teachers know what is expected of a 3rd grader, even if the student's in 1st grade. And so they would be like, all right, as I gave that example before about if everyone in the class is working on multiplication and division within 20, and you know the expectation in 3rd grade is multiplication and division within 100, and you have data that lets you know that students should be working on multiplication and division with 100, we have plenty of resources that we can provide that teacher that could then be used during those differentiated work times. Yeah, great question. Jamie.
I just wanted to provide an example. I don't know how
there you
the
go.
other elementary schools do it, but I know at Benson, my son is in 5th grade, and he is above, he reads very well, and they have taken him and put him in 6th grade reading, right? Or they put him into reading groups with 6th graders, and I know with my younger son, they've given him chapter books specifically at his reading level to challenge them where they are. Am I understanding that correctly?
You can tell it.
Well, I think one of the things we've done is we've been able to break them into groups. So we might have some students who are in 5th grade, and those are the students that your son is with, who are reading on a higher level. So they are now reading a different book, but using many of those skills you still want students to have. So I'll give the example. Students might score incredibly well on STAR. That's not our curriculum. So when they're back in the classroom, and let's say they're reading a book and they're reading for comprehension, or they're learning to do some research or writing essays, they may still really struggle with that. So STAR is that one kind of dipstick measure, but that may or may not speak to the depth that students need in all curricular areas. We have a lot of kiddos who could do, say, mental math. I just did it in my head. You need to show us 2 strategies of how you would solve it and still get the same answer, because real life work is not always just, I solved it in my head. It's the application of, I use these different strategies to make sure that what you are asking me as an employee, I've been able to accomplish, go back and get my work, cost effectiveness in solving different things. So STAR is that one moment, but sometimes we find that it's adapted to each child. So passages that they read, for example, may be of interest. Maybe this is a child whose family is well traveled, and they're able to access these questions with more ease than a child who's taking this and doesn't travel, doesn't read a lot. So there's a lot of little subtle nuances, but what I can say for our teachers is what we really try to do is meet kids where they are at, preferably never alone, always in a small group or at least with a partner. But there is so much opportunity for different types of literature. Our math program, versus math program, every lesson has challenges and then differentiated learning if you need to maybe go back a couple of steps. So I think that teachers are really masterful at knowing what the kids need, keeping it of interest level, keeping it developmentally, encouraging for kids. My first teaching job was gifted, talented, twice exceptional, and nonverbal students. And one of the things we found is we have a lot of parents just pushing until my kids can read. But their child wasn't comprehending and couldn't compare it to other forms of literature or couldn't make connections. So what we want to make sure is it's more that the depth of what we teach runs deep rather than skirting across the top. Hopefully that.
No, it's great. And
It
in
tests
December,
everything, basically.
yeah, and in December, I'm back and we'll be able to engage a little bit more around like what we're working on in our buildings, what strategies we're using. Some folks that work with me will talk specifically about literacy and math. And, so great question. And if we still haven't continued to address it in ways that you might want an answer to upcoming presentations, keep asking. Thank you. The one thing I would point out on this slide, which is the benchmark norm reference assessment slide to start 360, is that we do move students based on scores that they achieve in K1 or 2nd grade. So there's an early literacy assessment. We definitely use that with all of our kindergarten students. But when we see them achieving at a certain rate on that assessment, we move them to the reading assessment because we found if we continue to keep them there, they get pretty bored looking at that assessment and actually don't tend to achieve higher and higher. They're just waiting for someone to kind of engage with them and say, all right, what's the next challenge for me? And so that link, when you happen to look at your Slate Valley email, goes to guidelines of where it is you would move a student based on their achievement. So it's recommendations, from the STAR 360 group. And that will influence one of the upcoming slides in terms of, you'll see some scores and I'll explain to you that. So I've tried to include some screenshots of the type of questions. So these questions are all multiple choice. So different from the VTCAP assessment, which has a writing component. You're manipulating a screen to move different items, drag and drop. This is meant to be given 3 times a year in about 20 to 25 minutes. And its purpose is not a summative criterion reference exam at the end of the school year. And so we use it for a very different purpose. But again, as Matt said, we're trying to point people toward how are we achieving by the time we get to the end of the school year, and who's on grade level and who's not on grade level, that sort of thing. So I've included those for you to look at, and I just picked third grade because that's what was in there for the VT-CAP examples. And again, just want to make certain that I have said this, and I probably have said it 3 times, that our use of the STAR 360 data that we get 3 times a year informs our instruction, which is what we talked about, Amy talked about, and Matt talked about. It helps us figure out where students are achieving and if we need to intervene and provide different levels of support for those students. It does point to end of year expectations and where students are. We can change that rate of improvement if we want to see someone attempt to try to gain skills in a faster way. And then it also does have a connection to VT-CAP. VT-CAP is only in its 3rd year, as I said, are giving in the state of Vermont. So STARS saying, all right, this is where Becky achieved in the winter. This is what we expect the score to be on VT-CAP. It's not quite in sync yet because there's not enough assessment data, but it does provide that information for us if we wanted it. This has a comparison of the VT-CAP scores in the first column, our level of proficiency, and when I spoke about this earlier, you'll see everything in white is us achieving or exceeding the state average. And so when Jamie said, how does this compare to where you've been in the past? We've seen growth across our system in those scores on the Vermont Standardized Assessment going back to 2014. I pointed out that when you look at, or I said this earlier, there's 90 students taking an assessment. In grade 5 and grade 6, when you see we were off by 1 percentage point, that's a small amount. They would say statistically insignificant. So you'd say you're pretty close there. And then when you go back and look at the cohort data, you'll see that we have seen in the past our 3rd graders, this is the first time they're taking an assessment for this length of time on a computer, that we're able to make certain that they're achieving when they move on to 4th grade, when they move on to 5th grade. So we do see our cohort growth from 3rd to 5th grade and students achieving. On the furthest right are the results from last spring of our STAR 360 assessment. And so those stars next to 3rd grade, that high level of proficiency is because we still have some students taking early literacy. Like I spoke about in the earlier slide, we're moving students. So the students that are scoring at that high rate are students that are achieving faster than what their peers might. And so that number is a bit higher. And then when you go down to 9th grade, you'll see we give this benchmark assessment and we give it in the fall. And so that is just a fall score. We don't track that through an entire school year. Reason being is the 9th grade students take VT-CAP in the spring, and it's often a reflection of what it is they've gained for sets of skills up to 9th grade. That's the last year that they take that assessment, except for in science, which happens again in 11th grade. But again, I would say this performance is something to be proud of, and something in my time here hasn't been as high across the school district as it is currently. Last slide, Act 139. So I included this because, as Julie brought up, me. So there's a lot of talk about national test scores, and it gets used in different conversations. Something that I think is very important in my role is making certain that folks understand educational policy in the state of Vermont versus, let's say, Mississippi. So Mississippi will retain students by 3rd grade if they're not achieving in math and literacy grade level expectations. And so we in the state of Vermont do not have educational policy that says we will retain a student if they are not achieving at a specific level by a specific grade. So that means we have students working across our system that we already know are working off of grade level, and so we have to make certain that those students grow, but we're not setting educational policy at the state level that says if you're not achieving, you're going to be retained in 3rd grade. Very different when people are looking at NAEP scores in fourth grade and in other grades. What we have that's the closest thing to something that would say, how are we holding folks accountable for literacy and math in grades K, 1, and 3 is Act 139, which basically says all of those students will experience evidence-based instructional strategies that you'll make certain you use a screener, and that you'll use that screener, which we use STAR Early Literacy, to say these students aren't achieving at a rate which we would expect them to, so they're in need of urgent intervention, and then we communicate with families who those students are and what our plan is to make certain to progress monitor that achievement, and that we're in communication and partnering with families around early literacy and the ability to make certain that we're intervening so that those students have the best chance to be on grade level by the time they hit third grade, which is the first year they take PTCAP. This is the second year that that legislation has been in place, and so we've sent notified guardians. There are 5 kindergarten students and 2 second graders and 6 third graders who are already on EST plans, and 10 students across that K-3 grade span that are on IEPs. The significance of IEPs and the EST students, these are students we've already had contact with guardians. They've already made certain that we've communicated with them, we know we've set goals, we've made certain that we've had discussions around what the expectation is for those students. So when we go to share this information, they're folks that are already connected with us and they have a relationship working with us in regards to academic achievement. Those 5 kindergarten students are typically new to us. They may have attended one of our pre-K programs, but they may not have. And so in all of these cases, we try to leverage our family conferences, because there's nothing worse than receiving a communication from someone that you might not know that well. And so we want to make certain that we're having a face-to-face conversation and that we're articulating our plan to be able to support. And we continue to progress monitor. So there's another assessment that's given in the winter, and we continue to make certain that we're working with families and the students to see them achieve a rate that we hope is on grade level by the time they reach third grade. But very different than saying we're retaining a student if they're not achieving at a specific grade level at a specific point in their career. The state of Vermont does not do that. And then lastly, before I see you have your hand raised, Matt, just giving you some perspective of how many total communication letters we made and phone calls we made compared to the number of students that submitted that assessment. So again, there are students that we're working with, but it's not the majority. Matt.
So what I'm hearing from all this is that no child will be retained for academic reasons in K through 3 in Vermont because of Act 139. It just doesn't allow it. Like, we do our best to bring them to proficiency, but we kind of push them through until they get to 4th grade. And then at that point, by the time they're doing STARS assessments, we're like,
I would say, unlike the state of Mississippi, we do not have educational policy at the state level that says any student will be retained based on a specific expectation for the specific assessment.
That's just very no child left behind, and it's kind of scary to me.
A decision around retention at an early grade level is something that happens between teams, parents, guardian, everyone's involved. There's nothing that just says you don't achieve this academic benchmark that you're automatically.
Is there opportunity for retaining a student if they're not academically achieving?
Is there
when working with the family decides that?
Absolutely, part of the conversation. It happens. We have policy procedure around it, and we use that.
Because there's nothing shameful about being retained.
No. And when I see national testing, like knowing what different states hold as state policy will definitely influence what you see on a test score or testing results. So if folks were unhappy with the state of Vermont's performance, there are plenty of other states that have enacted policy that said students are going to be retained and
that makes their test
move
scores
on.
better.
You move on. I would say your responsibility is, are students growing in your system? not is everyone, you can be curious about, is everyone achieving off grade level? But we know even with increasing the rate of improvement for students, there are some students that we're working with that their achievement level is potentially not going to reach based on a series of conditions, grade level expectations.
Have there
But,
been?
and this, I was just saying, so this act is new, that there wasn't anything on the books really that said that they were gonna do anything, and this was about instruction. So this is kind of based on the science of reading and shifts in literacy instruction. It doesn't say anything about math. Whereas other states have math requirements. It could at some point. Doesn't currently.
Is there any, was there before passing Act 139, do you know if there's any research done into that of like, if we don't retain students at these grade levels, what does that mean for their future academically? What does that mean for their future professionally?
Yes.
To not be able to read at such a young
The
age.
reason why that third grade is identified is because there's mountains and mountains of research about what happens after third grade with students that are working on grade level and their ability to achieve on grade level after that point. Yep. And that's why when I bring up the state of Mississippi, there are other states that they have expectations in that grade band, the K-3. Thanks.
Thank you.
I do think it's a little sad we don't have one of those for math.
I would imagine that it'll happen in the next 2 years,
Okay.
maybe even sooner. I think there's probably a lot going on in the legislature in regards to Act 73, but I would imagine it's probably in the works.
Okay.
Thank you, Casey.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Take the test, it'd be interesting if anybody decides to do it and see, even the questions that were on here, I'm not gonna lie, we're kind of like, especially, again, some of the math ones.
I do have a question, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
And I haven't looked it up anywhere else, so I'm relying on. When we have students, like in every grade, we have students who are kids who maybe their birthdays are anywhere from like June to the end of August, whose parents decided to wait a year for them because they're near the cutoff. Then we have children who, like I have a granddaughter whose birthday, she made it by 2 days of the cutoff in August. And she's doing great, but what are we seeing with kids that are coming close to the cutoff and their parents keeping them in pre-K or home or whatever they're doing? And how well are they doing compared to kids who are, because we have kids that are a whole year younger than a lot of the kids in their class. Where are we seeing that at? And not anything, what can we do about that? But also, what are we seeing out there? How's that affecting this?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the age has to do with what are the experiences prior to entering into our system. So not focus so much on age, but what has the experience been? Has someone attended one of our programs, or Chris would know more than I, but a partner program? Are they in an in-home daycare? What were they exposed to? So those sort of screeners that we try to work through. We've started to brainstorm, Chris and myself and a colleague of ours, how to best use some of the tools we have to be able to identify those students that are in our systems.
Right.
Regardless, again, of age, but just kind of what is their skill development and how do we intervene? How do we kind of get younger, get into the mix a little bit more and provide some additional support so that students are entering K then closer on the expectation of what the academics look like at that age.
And I would just add that we have those grade level expectations versus age level expectations. So the way that the assessments are designed is for students like in third grade that have had 3 years of school and a kindergarten experience and a preschool experience. You know what I'm saying? So the kids that are taking the 5th grade assessment are assumed to have had those 5 years plus the kindergarten potentially. So with recognition that they're within an age band because of cutoff dates, but that's also one of the reasons why we hold firm to our cutoff dates is because of those developmental needs as well.
Matt?
I have one last question. I guess this is more for you, Chris, than anyone else. I'm going to try to word it very carefully because I don't want to throw an organization under the bus. But do we see a difference in performance in our students since the Parent-Child Center has had struggle with staffing? Like, does that seem to be affecting our performance? Like,
I don't know about any one particular entity in terms of early childhood. I think that there's been increasing demand for high-quality early childcare and high-quality preschool programs, and having folks have access. So a lot of folks have tried to expand access to take in more students. And we can tell you that, based on our experience and based on, state and national data, the students who have exposure to, literacy, rich exposure to literacy in the home, and have a language-rich preschool experience do better, right, academically. But I don't know about any one particular entity. We don't disaggregate the data based on where they've had a preschool experience. We do look at sometimes whether students have had a preschool experience or have not had a formal preschool experience, but not individual entities.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Casey. Committee reports, building and grounds.
We had a meeting tonight, we talked about a few things. The budget, we were given a 5-year budget plan on what we need to be doing at the schools. So it goes out 5 years from fiscal year 27. Chris has got a copy if anybody wants to look at it. It's just projects that we can do within a school budget. It doesn't include, there's a lot of projects we would need a bond for that this type of thing can't address. So when you're looking at that, remember that there's certain projects that are going to cost more than we can put in a regular budget. The elevator's coming along, the plans are almost done, so we can go out to bid. We talked a little bit about what Chris, Casey's calling the makerspace, was kind of like the industrial arts or whatever you want to call it place. They're working on plans for that, of how it would look and what we would do. The high school boiler has been connected so that all the boilers in the high school are connected together so that we can shut something down. And not yet, it's almost done. It's going out to bid, right? That's what it is. It's finally going out to bid so that you can turn off the boil in one part of the school and still have heat from a different boiler, which has been something we've been trying to do for a while. The steam part of it, part of the school still heated by steam, but that's still going to stay that way. That's one of the projects that would need a bond to finish, to get off the steam. And I guess basically that was it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Any questions about that? I just think it's important that we all know that there are, as best as we are doing and as well as we are doing with our infrastructure, there are things that are too big for a budget. We're never going to be able to put them in our budget and get them done. So I just think as we start to move through this Act 73 stuff, the nicest word I can think of right now, and as we start looking at what's going on in our county, that I think it is fair to say that if we want to maintain this building into the future, we are going to have to look at some kind of small bond to be able to finish up and really get our buildings where we want them to be. So I think that's just the reality. So we just want to put that out there. And same with, Peter said a little bit about the conversation about the maker space, talking about kind of like, we're still looking at like, how would that work? What would it look like? What's in our community? Who's available? Like really talking about that, our community in that space. Yes. So.
So talking about the bonds, are we waiting until we know what's happening? Is that kind of our feel for a couple of years?
We're going to have to
hold what we can that's not urgently needed to be fixed.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Chris will tell us if it's urgent.
Right. We haven't really discussed it at all. He was just pointing out that the things we're fixing right. It's not like we're band-aiding anything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's just there's some aspects of it that we aren't going to do for $150,000 or $200,000, you know, it might cost $1 million or something. So what we would do is when we get to that point, and like Julie said, we're gonna wait till after everything, the state settles down, you know what direction we're going. We could start talking about maybe getting a bond to get some of these bigger issues done and over with. So, yeah, I mean, you're not looking at next year.
They're not projects you can start and stop and start and stop. It's something you just got to do. So, yep. All right. Any other questions on that? Yes.
Just as a thought, how is the kitchen project in Orwell complete?
So close.
Almost.
Glenn, so close.
Countertops have been going in, the cabinets are in, they templated for the countertop. And some of the appliances are being delivered. Hoping a couple weeks for the countertop. They can finish stuff up.
So
Couple weeks for the countertop?
Most likely it will be after Christmas before it's 100% functional at the earliest.
Before everybody moved in and ready to go.
Yeah.
Probably the start of January.
Right.
Is what Patrick is planning on.
So we're a couple months off of what we hoped for. Yeah.
Has there
And
been,
part of it was just ordering stuff. So you order stuff and they say, oh, it'll be a week. No, it won't be. It'll be 6 weeks.
I remember we had a bunch of change orders. The center wall completely came down. That was not in the plans. I mean, there was some delays for sure, but all in all, we're gonna have a better product in the end. It's just, it has taken a little bit.
So we're still
longer.
transporting from Benson
Yep.
to Orwell.
so initially we had approved those change orders in the additional funding. Are we going to be okay there, or is there going to be further charges that are kind of lurking out there because of?
We're tracking a few small change orders as we finish up. We're gonna do them at the end of the project, but it's nothing major. It's like a couple thousand. It's not 20, 30, 40,000.
So it's up to $450 out of the food service, and after that it goes to capital service.
Okay. Thank you. That's exciting. Should have a party when that opens. That should be a big grand opening party. Exciting. All right, any other questions? All right, public comment. All right, agenda building. Brooke's not here to agenda build with us. Usually her brain is agenda building as we're going along.
Online.
I see her. I know we're gonna have a finance committee meeting, so there will definitely be finance. Another draft.
And
Because
we
there are
are,
changes. Yep.
sorry, Julie, can you hear me?
Yep.
We also will have the Elks Club at our next meeting to talk about a donation to Unified Sports.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
right. We'll definitely have an Act 73 discussion because December 1st is the cutoff and who knows where so we'll have that too.
Along those lines,
Yep.
Cheryl, has anything been said about the December 1st letter? That's kind of any expectations yet, or?
Okay.
Guess we'll find out next week.
Yep. All right, anybody else? Yeah, anybody else? Anything? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Peter and Patty, throwing them out there tonight. All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.